Hey everyone, welcome to our session with Leah and Gabi of Data Culture. I'm really excited about this one because these ladies have an amazing approach of bringing a full stack data solution, but also blending it with company culture in a very unique way. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Leah Weiss, founder of Data Culture, and Gabi Steele, founder of Data Culture.
Thank you so much, Jason. We are so excited to be here with all of you. I'm Gabi.
And I'm Leah, and we realized we might be the only speakers who are actually in the same room, and it might be a unique sight in these times, but we're excited to be together while we speak to you.
Cool. And we are going to be speaking about data culture. I am just going to give it one more second as people join us in this virtual environment. But it's good to be together. It's good to be here. Cool. So we know the slides work. I like that transition. Cool. So I think we can kick things off. So again, I'm Gabi, this is Leah. We are the founders of Data Culture, and we're going to be talking to you today about scaling data culture. Which is perfect because it's the name of our company, but specifically how you can do the same and how you can leverage some of our learnings in your work and organizations. Just to review how it's going to work for the next 25 minutes.
So we'll get into our backgrounds a little bit just because I think they're unique. And we are going to talk about the opportunity that we think this modern data stack presents in terms of building data culture at your organization. But we're also going to talk about kind of the gaps that still exist and the challenges and ways that we've kind of gone about solving for some of those.
Yeah, and some tactical advice and secrets towards the end, because we do want to share this message. But before we go further, we just want to give a little bit of background on who we each are and how we got into this line of work. The company Data Culture that we now run is a long-term collaboration between Leah and myself. We met while working at a company called WeWork, which grew and scaled and was a really exciting place to be working on data culture, data-driven thinking. Leah can start by telling her story.
Yeah, so I was an early employee at WeWork. I joined before there was a data infrastructure, before there was a data team. I actually was part of the first Fivetran implementation a few years back. And that was back when we could kind of get the CEO of Fivetran on the phone to troubleshoot. It was an exciting time. And built out the data infrastructure and team there and kind of had every role on the data team because that's just what you do when you're building and scaling data capabilities. And did a lot of BI infrastructure, all of that fun stuff, but was really focused on trying to get the value of the data that we had back into the business. So started working on data product. And that's when I got Gabi to join us, luckily, to lead data visualization engineering.
Yeah, so Leah brought me in. I was working at the Washington Post at the time. I was doing data storytelling, and we did start together this data visualization engineering team. But we also did a lot of work at the company on building a foundation for data-driven thinking and scaling this idea of data culture. While we worked there, while we worked at WeWork, it was quite large. I joined and there was like 2,000 people, and by the time we left, there was 16,000. So the robust data infrastructure that Fivetran enabled, I would say, was set in terms of technology, but the way people thought about data and were using it, there was a lot of space for us to grow, and we launched a global data innovation program and taught people around the world how to use the company's data. And then we left and launched Data Culture and started doing it at other businesses. And we'll share some of those learnings later today, but that's really our backgrounds to begin. Cool.
So you probably know some of this because you're at the Modern Data Stack conference, but we just kind of want to give an overview of how this space is changing and where we think the opportunities are. So you might be familiar with kind of this old world, this old way of thinking about data infrastructure, where you kind of treat your data infrastructure in the same way as your IT infrastructure. So you have specialists who are building their own pipelines, dealing with different APIs, and it's really a heavy duty kind of tech management platform that you have to build. That means that your data people, the people who are managing your data pipelines, who kind of know the value of your data, are pretty far away from the business because they're really dealing with these pipelining issues and they're not as connected to business needs. So that's an obstacle of kind of this old world. But luckily, there are some amazing tools out there that are getting at this problem.
Yeah, so again, we didn't start by this, but Fivetran is an amazing partner to us. We love the product, we love the company, and there's a lot of tools in this space that have changed the way the world works around data tools, and that's kind of the focus of this conference. So what these tools have enabled is to start closing that gap between data engineers, and they've solved this problem in a big way of moving data into systems. They integrate with each other. Each company is working on better integrations with the next. And we see this as a huge opportunity to tie businesses together a lot more and free up the time of data engineers who were spending so many hours coding the best pipelines, et cetera. So we're really grateful. However,
so in that old world, we mentioned your first data hires and a bunch of your data talent, they're going to be working on managing pipelines. In this new world where you have amazing tools like Fivetran, your first few data hires can actually be pretty closely aligned with the business. You can maybe start with an analytics engineer or a BI developer or someone who's an expert in data modeling as opposed to data pipelining. So that really kind of starts to close the gap between your data infrastructure and your business. So we think that's the opportunity of the modern data stack and why we're so excited about it. But a few problems, a few relics of this old world still remain.
Yeah, so you bring the two together and we're looking at this landscape and there's a lot of good things happening. We've moved really far in a positive direction, but we still see a little bit of an issue. There's this circle that's missing. There's a gap. People can drop into the chat what we think it's going to be 2 words that are going to show up in this circle, and it's the gap that we focus on. And you guessed it, it's data culture. So even though there are thank you, Tom, thank you. That's exactly what we were hoping for. So even though these tools solve so many problems, we do still see this gap persist. And so how can we help tackle this and identify, okay, technology is sort of out of the way now, right? Like we know that these tools are super powerful. They're easy to use. The role of the data analyst that Leah's mentioning has also grown. I think things that data engineers used to own in the past can now be shared by people who are slightly closer to the business. But how do you create a culture where data is being used every day to make informed decisions? And how do you ensure that those tools lend themselves to that culture?
So the opportunity that we really want to talk about here is how do we make sure that even when you're implementing best-in-class tools, building this modern data stack from the ground up, you're investing in data culture from the beginning, so you don't end up replicating some of the problems of this old world where your data capabilities and your technologies are super removed from the business and siloed, so you're not getting the value out of your data that you need. So that's kind of the premise of data culture, and it's what we've kind of sought after changing whenever we join an organization.
Yeah, there's a little aside here, and Leah can explain, but we've thrown in a meme in case you've experienced a similar challenge or you're starting this journey of implementing a modern data stack, how it can sometimes go.
So we've seen this a few times, and I hope everyone can relate to this tweet in your own quarantine, but to kind of make the parallel, the idea here is that a lot of times the business starts to want to ask questions of the data, and they're very excited about kind of surfacing data and becoming a data-driven organization. So at the beginning, it's super exciting. I'm going to build a data infrastructure. I'm going to build a data-driven company. Great. So you buy Fivetran, maybe you set up Snowflake, you start investing in all of the right tools. And then a few months later, you're like, this didn't necessarily have the business impact I was looking for, even though everything is kind of in place. And that's because we're missing this kind of final piece of investing in data culture.
Well put, Leah. I won't even add to that. I love that. And it's not that like setting up a data infrastructure is as easy as knowing how to read, but I think like the idea that you set out with really high ambitions and you're focused on all the ways that data is going to transform your organization, those are still true, and it's important to have those high hopes, but the path can get a little bit foggy when you just implement tools without really thinking about the users and who's going to be able to drive that culture home. So we're not the only ones who believe this. 90% of executives don't think technology is actually the problem or the main challenge to becoming a data-driven organization, which we feel is very honest and very much in line with this idea that, Fivetran, Snowflake, Looker, so many different tools have really solved the technology problem, right? Like, you still need data engineers to manage them, but it's not so much that you can't build the stack. So how do companies become data-driven, and how can we help empower people in these businesses and help these executives? And maybe some of them are here today.
So if you're in this 9% of people where you have a technology problem, you're in the right place. There are some amazing tools that you can leverage to kind of solve that problem for you. For the rest of us, this is probably a people problem, a culture problem, a process problem. And if you only have one and not the other, you're not going to get the results you want.
Yeah, so if you're in that 9%, you just need to go by Fivetran, right?
Yeah. Talk to Rachel at Fivetran.
She's amazing. Talk to Rachel and Katie. Cool. Or you can talk to us about data, which we feel really is not just a technical solution. So there are lots of parts of this engineering world that are really focused on writing the best code, and software engineering historically, like, you want to staff an amazing team. For us, data has never been just a technology solution. And we'll talk about how we got into this field as well and our beliefs around that. But we feel this is a really important thing to talk about.
And this is probably the thing that we really work to communicate with every organization that we work with. So data isn't just, a CSV that you export, or a report, or an analysis. It's not any of those one-off things. It's a way of kind of adding rigor to your thinking, of thinking in terms of hypotheses that you want to test. It's a prioritization framework. It really has to be integrated with the business in order to be successful. Otherwise, you're going to continue to make decisions and then look at dashboards that are sort of retrospective, and there's always going to be a misalignment. So we want to kind of change the way we talk about data. So it's not just numbers, it's not just tools, it's not just capabilities, but it's a way of operating your business.
And it's a way of thinking. And I think, like, a lot of the time when you try to implement a tool or some technology, it's like that technology is going to be the missing piece and solve the problem. Data isn't that way. It's not just like, if I had all the numbers, then my business would be that much more successful. It's a much more holistic part of like the business process. And that disappeared. Cool. So in our line of work, people think that having us come in and implement a modern data stack is going to change everything. That happens all the time, and we're really happy to do that. That's the thing. So if technology is the problem, call Rachel. If culture is the problem, call Rachel and call us. And we actually are the solution, and we're very good, and that kind of would be the right direction.
We love building data stacks. We love building data teams. It's exciting to be able to show value so quickly and kind of kickstart your data journey. But the reason we think we're successful, and the reason we think that we actually make a change, is because we approach building the stack a little bit differently. And we'll go into that.
Yeah, so implementing a data stack is great, but that's not exactly what we do. When we go into companies to help solve their problems, we take every step of the process through this lens of education and helping everyone in the business actually build data culture. And here's how we do it.
So the first thing that we always keep in mind is we do not want to create black box systems. We don't want there to be any kind of mystery about where the data is coming from, how it's being processed. I know data can seem kind of magical sometimes, and it's super exciting. But we actually think that can get in the way of getting the business aligned to your data capabilities. So we like to bring people into our process, show them what's going on every step of the way, and make this data process just more inclusive.
More inclusive, more transparent. What we've seen is that things that when we go into businesses and things really aren't working, either because a data stack has been implemented that's not successful, or there's been nothing in place prior, by simply talking people through what it will entail, whether or not they're going to be the owners of these tools, can completely change the way they think and understand data. So yeah, get rid of those black box systems.
And this will repeat many times, but we really want to bridge that gap between data engineering and business users. Data engineers have to understand the needs of the business, and the business has to understand kind of the data and analytics workflow.
Yeah, and the last part is bringing data into the decision-making process in every part of the company. And this kind of lends itself also to multidisciplinary teams and multidisciplinary thinking. But if data is accessible, if it's clean, if it's modeled perfectly, but no one's using it, and they're not being served that information in the moment when they need to make a decision, it's completely useless, and it's definitely not changing your business. So how do you incorporate data into the fabric of your organization so that every choice that's being made is informed by the information you already have? One thing that we've also brought into our work from the beginning is that we help businesses leverage data that already exists. We're not going to necessarily say, spend the next 15 quarters hiring a bunch of data engineers to build out functionality so that you can finally collect data, whatever. Like, there's obviously so much information that businesses already have, and every business is really like a data business because it's just incorporated everywhere. How do you get access to that information and then get value out of it immediately? Cool. So it's time for us to share some more secrets.
Yeah, so the kind of thesis of our work, I think, is clear by now, and we'll reveal to you. So people come to us to kind of build technology capabilities and data capabilities. And again, we're happy to do that. We love using these tools. We love building data stacks, but our goal is to shift how your company operates, change how you think about data, change your decision-making process. So we like to align with leadership as much as we can to help you reach our business goals, and data is simply the tool that we use to get there.
And we sort of pair implementing a modern data stack with scaling data culture. Everything needs to be happening at the same time. So even though people may approach us for technical needs, we sneak in this data culture. And that's really the piece that makes it sticky. It's what makes people want to work with us, in addition to many other reasons. And it also makes everything worthwhile for the business. It's how you reach those goals. It's how you see the return, the ROI on the investment that you're going to make in the modern data stack.
Cool. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and just get super tactical, maybe share some hard truths. And we're going to split this up into kind of business people and data people and address some of the concerns separately. We've been on both sides of this equation. We know the pain of, business people who don't feel like they can make informed decisions. We know data people who, are sending CSVs and reports in a rush because there's a meeting tomorrow. So we've been on both sides of this. And again, in a perfect world, business people would also be data people, and data people would all be business people. But for now, just because this is how orgs are structured for the most part, we'll kind of tackle them separately.
So down the line, this is going to be one slide together. It'll be we'll work with the Fivetran designers to reiterate that maybe next year at the conference. But for now, these are separate, and we've been on both sides. So starting with business people.
So what we want to stress here is that you will get amazing work out of your data people if you work to bring them into the business. So that means investing in their domain expertise and also speaking to them in a way where they understand the business goals and the why behind the request. I think, there's a pattern that data people are quite familiar with, where it's just like, give me this report, or give me this dashboard, or give me this analysis. And you're never kind of going to give that stakeholder what they need unless you actually know what they're trying to achieve. So just start that conversation from the beginning and bring the data person into your thought process.
Yeah, and share, this is on the same note, but share actual business challenges. We say this all the time. If everybody in a company, and if everyone in your 16,000 person organization could write perfect SQL, it wouldn't necessarily save the company money. Having more technical capabilities is great, but actually being able to directly address business challenges is what changes the way your organization runs. And for any human or data person, when being asked, can you just give me this number? Can you just run this report? They can stay up all night doing it. They can deliver that number, that task. But then what? What challenge is being solved, really? And trust them, and there needs to be more trust internally as well, that they can understand those challenges, which they will if you've invested in the domain expertise part. And finally,
lastly, for anyone who's been a part of kind of a data culture program in the past, you know that we love talking about problem definitions. And we think a problem definition is super powerful because it will kind of start the brainstorming process. If you speak in the language of problems, people will get creative. Data people, I think, are by nature incredibly creative people, but they're not always asked to use that parts of their brains. So if you speak in the language of well-defined problems, you'll be amazed by what they come up with.
Yeah, and instead of saying like, I need this number, you can say like, this is happening because of Y or X, and we would like to change that. These bad consequences are happening. If you've done a data culture program, then you know, and we do a lot of those trainings, and I'm seeing in the chat people talking about becoming data culture evangelists, which is exactly what we're trying to create here. So successful. But now for the side of the data people, and I'll let Leah start with this one.
This was a hard lesson for me to learn. I think I'm still learning, but there's a stage in every company's growth where this distinction will emerge between business analysts and data analysts or data engineers, however whatever your terminology is. And data people, or kind of the traditional data analysts, will say these business analysts, they love Excel, they love building presentations, they don't really understand my workflow and why things are more complicated than they think. And the business people are like, well, my boss is trying to make a decision and I'm just trying to arm them with the data. There's a tension that can sometimes emerge, but if you lean into that tension, it will go badly for all parties. So build bridges, make friends with the business analysts in your organization, figure out what their needs are. And if they love Excel, and this is kind of hard for me to say, but if they love Excel and they can't move on, it's okay. Learn about their process, because no data tool or no data solution is going to be useful if people don't use it.
We're not at a place right now where we can walk away from Excel. And we're not answering all the questions in the chat, but someone asks, is it more important for data people to understand the business than the other way? And I think that's kind of interesting to talk about. Our goal here is to speak that there needs to be more transparency on both sides, eliminate black box systems on both ends. But I do think data people deserve a greater investment in terms of understanding, domain expertise and what's going on in the business. And with these modern data stack tools, that can change. Okay, cool. Let's talk about ambassadors.
Cool. So, and we have to move a little bit briskly through the end of this, but cool. This is an exciting opportunity and something where we've had a lot of success. We mentioned at the beginning, we built this data culture community at WeWork, and it's something we try to do elsewhere as well. There will be people in the business that know the power of data. These are scrappy people that know they can be much more efficient in their roles if they understand data and how to use it effectively. Invest in those people and build community around that. So instead of this tension between data people and business people, now you actually have a community, and they can make you look good and you can make them look good, and you can kind of solve business problems together, which is way more fun.
Yeah, turn that annoying person that's slacking you all the time into somebody who sits in the room with you and learns SQL. And this is us really doing it a little bit of a different time, but Leah's standing there talking to a group of people who are learning about how to access data within the organization. We did a lot of this work for a long time, and people were really engaged, and we were truly shocked by the thousands within our organization and other companies that wanted to learn about how to better access data. So we promise it works. Invest. And then inclusivity is another one that's important here.
So we've mentioned this a few times, but data can be complicated. I know that I don't want to underestimate the technical challenges people are working with and solving for, but data is also kind of made to be an exclusive club sometimes. And if you don't understand all of the pipelining and the transformation and all of the tools involved, then you kind of don't get it and you can't use it. And that's kind of an attitude that we want to minimize. So bring people in, speak in their language, and bring new voices into the conversation.
Which also lends itself to the last piece, which is diversity. And we didn't mention this at the beginning, but both Leah and I did not start our careers in data. My first degree was in painting and drawing and fine arts, and Leah studied
German and history.
Very relevant. Here we are speaking at the Modern Data Stack Conference. But what we've seen time and time again is when you introduce voices from people who've had different experiences into the data conversation, that's the best reward here. And it's such an important field where you need to have greater levels of diversity, and having people who just had the same data backgrounds, the same education, really limits the type of work that you can do. So one example that we just want to like talk about for a second, and shout out to our Code with Classi scholars. We partnered with an organization called Code with Classi this summer, which is Carly Kloss's coding academy for young people. And we taught 14 to 19-year-old girls data science on Zoom. And they were amazing. They came from all different backgrounds. None of them had studied data science prior. I think like 90% of them are going on to college to study it. Really, really powerful, really impactful. And we want to hire these people into our organizations moving forward. We want to, you know, these are the people that are going to lead the way in terms of how data can evolve and actually solve the greatest challenges that, that exist in the world.
Yeah, we really think of it as an imperative that we change the data landscape and we bring more voices into it that haven't had access historically. So as much as these young people want to learn data skills and are practicing their Python and learning about machine learning, it's really, you know, for us as much as anyone, we need them. We need their voices. So we really encourage you to find ways to invest in people with non-traditional data backgrounds.
Yeah, so as we conclude, we just want to give you some like specific ways that you can get involved. There's a Slack community. If you visit our website, it's open, you can join. The Knowledge House is another amazing mentorship organization that matches mentors and mentees. So if you're interested in either end of that, definitely visit their website. And Fivetran is actually a partner in our Code with Classi program. Next summer, we're launching camps across the US for young people to learn data science. So if you're interested in mentoring or getting involved, you can reach out to hello@datacult.com, or you can reach out to Fivetran about these opportunities. We're always posting new ones. It's really important to us that more people get involved in this field and this space as soon as possible. So now we're going to pause for questions. Jason, I think you're coming back. Yeah.
Amazing. You gave me so much to noodle with. I don't even know where to begin. That was awesome. Thank you. We have some questions that have come in, and also a note to everyone who asked questions. We're going to do our best to do a really nice wrap-up blog post. I will work with Leah and Gabi to get as many of these questions answered. If we can't do them here, we'll do them in the written form. So we got a couple questions around data definitions and data catalogs. How do you make data catalogs in the enterprise? There's so many siloed efforts, and how can data culture, and the data culture shift can help? Please share any experiences you've had on this. And just to let you know, we have 1 minute.
Yeah, okay. 1 minute to talk about data cataloging. It's a tough challenge. I will say that we've seen this problem tackled in every way imaginable, from, you know, just like Google Sheets to, you know, enterprise tools. And I think it's less about the actual solution and more about how you socialize it. So I would say prioritize, obviously automated data cataloging is great. It can save you a bunch of time, but prioritize ways to actually interface with the business to make sure that they understand and they're using it effectively. Yeah, so over communicate, and no tool will solve all your problems.
I love it. Maybe a suggestion for your next meme. You should have Yoda saying, "Buying a tool does not a solution make." I'll just as an idea. Well, hey, we're out of time, but I'll work with you ladies to answer some of these questions via a wrap-up email or blog post, and we'll go from there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks, everyone.
So just as a programming note for everyone else, join our next session. It starts at Jacob, and it's starting here in just a second. Talk to you soon.